And who better to talk about the national security paradigm and achievement during Modi's 11 than someone who's been at the helm of affairs of the Indian Army? It's our privilege to have with us on this special broadcast General Manoj Pande, the 29th Chief of the Army Staff. He was in the hot seat of the Indian Army between April 2022 and June 2024. Welcome, General Pande. Thanks very much for being with us. This spotlight on national security is very, very timely now, obviously, because we are less than a month from what has been a historic military operation that we've called Operation Sindoor. So I'd like to start this discussion on the Modi 11 national security achievements by asking for your views on Operation Sindoor, sir.
Firstly, thank you, Shiv, for having me here. Indeed, like you said, Sindoor has redefined our security paradigm. And in fact, it has redefined our strategic outlook, established certain new normals in terms of how we deal with our security challenges, especially in the context of counter-terrorism. Also, the kind of clarity and convergence that was displayed between the political aim, the political leadership, and the military strategy is something to be noted. In terms of utility of force, I think it is shown as to how force can be utilized to achieve strategic objectives. Also, if I may say here, while defense and diplomacy are complementary, this has shown that as to how defense can come on its own and contribute to meeting strategic objectives. In terms of our response to what happened on 22nd April, I think it was based on, it was a principled, calibrated retaliation that we undertook, shaped by our leadership, shaped by firm resolve, and shaped by a very calculated application of force. Also, it has established a new paradigm wherein we have dealt or we have displayed as to how restraint with strength and how precision with purpose can be applied to achieve our strategic objectives. Our response was also based on very strong and firm footing of both legal as well as moral issues. And I feel it also demonstrated as to how our country's economic and military power can be combined and then executed through application of both military as well as non-military means. And if I were to sum up, I think what we saw is a manifestation and validation of what has happened or what has been happening over the last decade or so, be in terms of indigenous equipment, be it in terms of our higher defense management and the reforms that have been undertaken, and number of other things that have happened in the security domain.
Let's go into all of those building blocks one by one, because, and I'm glad you mentioned it like that, General Pande, because this didn't happen overnight. Things have been changing gradually over the last 10, 11 years, which has led up to India responding to this attack in a very decisive, cohesive, tri-service manner. So whether it is higher defense management, whether it is Agnipath, whether it is air defense, whether it is all of the other things you mentioned, this big focus on indigenous equipment, something that you have stood very strongly for as well. They all came together to manifest in Operation Sindoor. Let's go into each of these one by one. I'd like to start with self-reliance and the focus on indigenous equipment. How important has that been? Because that has gradually increased over the last decade, visibly, sir.
Absolutely. And just like you rightly pointed out, self-reliance, not only in terms of our acquisition of new weapon systems, but equipment, but also in terms of sustaining the war effort. Self-reliance for critical defense equipment under the overall ambit of Atmanirbharta is something which has been very crucial, or one of the major aspects of what we have achieved during the last decade or so. And there are three important aspects to it, or what we have been able to achieve. One is the participation of private industry in this entire effort. The second is also the participation and encouragement or the contribution of a very vibrant startup ecosystem that we have in a country. And the third is tapping the innovation potential. I think when we talk of self-reliance, it is all of these three that have come together. The private industry has stepped up in a very effective manner. Our defense exports have increased. So I think the results are there for all of us to see. The services and the government on their part are playing their role well. So I see a lot of potential and promise for our indigenous defense protection as we move forward. And this was also evidenced during Op Sindoor, where you had indigenous weapon systems, be it Akash, be it BrahMos, which were made good use of.
Very true. Now coming to the issue of higher defense management, which I'd like you to talk about, because not many people understand the implications of what those changes, actually were. Could you detail those for us and explain how that actually impacted what we saw last month, as well as from the Army's perspective, sir, what would you say have been the big national security highlights during your tenure and in the last 10 years?
Right. I would say that during the last 10 years, one of the first things which the government did was the higher defense organization, or restructuring the higher defense organization, and in fact, the national security apparatus. And let me explain. In terms of higher defense organization, the two seminal reforms that took place was A, establishing the post of the Chief of Defense Staff, and B, the Department of Military Affairs.
Yes.
And the aim of both these was to make sure that earlier when we were working in silos, so that is some things that is dispensed with. We have better synergy, we have better coordination between the military and the civil component of those operating. It was also in terms of how your integrated capability development programs come up together, how the jointness and integration not only within the services, but also within the Ministry of Defense takes place. So all these, as also a single point of military advice. So all this was achieved by setting up the CDS as well as the Department of Military Affairs. Alongside, in the national security apparatus, you had the Defense Planning Committee, which was established, and the SPG, or the Strategic Planning Group, which was sort of revitalized. Alongside this was another significant step in terms of setting up of the cyber space and the special ops agency.
Very important,
which was a start and which is a precursor of larger cyber space and special ops command that will come up in due course. So the higher defense organization and higher defense management was one important aspect which was addressed in right earnest. In terms of decision making, I did mention of as to how the political and the military components came together during Sindoor. I think it is again a manifestation of how this entire system, I feel, worked effectively.